want to show you how you can move very fast. I like ChatGPT 4. When I like my inline, I like being able to write my code right here. That I'm ahead by using it, and as long as I know, it's kind of like somebody whispering in your shoulder, know to ignore them, when to ignore them, and grab that whole mapping file when you need it.
Welcome, everyone. I am extremely excited you're here for this pre-GPT Dreamin' event, this kickoff event for the week-long GPT Dreamin' next week. As a reminder, if you haven't already registered for the week-long virtual GPT Dreamin' event, you can do so using the link in the resources below this video. If you're streaming from X, YouTube, or LinkedIn, you'll need to switch to our platform to get the resources that we've prepared for you today. So the quickest way to do that is to use aiforcetraining.com/live, and you're going to get right to where you need to go. So today, I'm more than excited to welcome today's expert, Steve Simpson. Steve, thank you so much for meeting with all of us today. We have a ton of attendees, especially in the developer and architect roles, which I know you're excited to speak to. I'm calling from Alpharetta, Georgia, on this live. Where are you?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Awesome.
So I'm glad to be able to join you.
Yeah, super happy to have you on. You know, there's just so much going on in the AI space, and AI is really affecting everybody's roles overall. So, you know, who better to have on than a 31X certified CTA, a CTA instructor, founder of your own company, Twin Shark. You're a group leader for your own local Salesforce group, a co-founder of another Dreamin' event called Cactus Force. I mean, and the list goes on. So you are, of course, the perfect person to talk to when it comes to AI and how it's affecting developers and architects.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate being on, and I love to see the energy. We know AI has been evolving over the years, but it was almost like this splash that just hit us, like a little over a year ago. It just suddenly came out of nowhere, and you went from having, capabilities were at a low level to all of a sudden you're speaking to a computer that actually can speak better English than you can. And so it just came out of nowhere, and everyone's been scrambling to see how it can be helpful, both in the good and then watch out for the dangers of the bad.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah. With generative AI, I guess it was just over a year now that we had the launch of ChatGPT, which was the mass market sort of rollout of what generative AI can do. And so we've got to adjust, right? All of our roles are slightly shifting now with the capabilities that we have with generative AI. It's being infused into tons of tools and products, obviously inside the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's having an impact on every role. And like you said, the good and the bad. We have to skill up and tool up for the good parts, and we have to be educated about the challenging parts. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And so here we are. We're in the middle of this massive transition, this shift. And so that's why we do these lives. Our goal is to sort of accelerate the adoption of AI, share the information with the community as much as possible. That's what GPT Dreamin' is all about next week. We have tons of sessions and speakers. It's so nice to have you on as sort of a pre-event kickoff. So really looking forward to diving into the technicals, the details today on how developers and architects are using AI in their space.
It's been, when it first hit, you're like, okay, it can generate some fun little things. And I was just like everybody else, let's plug in fun little things that it can do. And then I kind of was watching and being careful. I heard about there's data leaks. You got to be careful. Basically, if you have a straight license of GPT, anything you say to it, just assume GPT is a gossiper. So whatever you tell GPT, GPT may gossip. It may not quote you perfectly, but if you give it some code, that code may show up somewhere else. And so just assume GPT gossips. And if you go from there, now Salesforce created their whole protection. We all saw that, at Dreamforce. We saw that with the trusted layer, the zero retention. But when you use it direct outside of Salesforce, just be aware of what you're pasting in there. Don't be pasting confidential names. confidential numbers or code that you're worried about leaking out there. But if you can live in that public arena, that the stuff I'm doing isn't rocket science, it's not that, then you can kind of dive in with both feet, as long as you keep those kind of concerns in your mind.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting on talking about safety and using it outside the Salesforce tool set. You're operating outside the trust layer. And in the beginning, when OpenAI and ChatGPT were rolling out some of their tool set, there wasn't much a concern for safety and for data leaks. And so over time, they heard, I think, everyone's concerns, and they've added some features behind the scenes that allow you as an individual to sort of opt out of some of that data sharing. To train the next models. They've also added some enterprise editions, and there's all kinds of market shifts going on there. So, just being knowledgeable and educated about the tools you're using and where the data goes is really critical. And with AI, anytime AI is used or infused inside of a tool, one of the first questions I teach for everyone to ask is, okay, how's the information being used, and
Mhm.
is what I'm putting in, what am I putting in, and is what I'm putting in being shared with the model, or not? And then something that everyone has to dive into. So it's tough to live in an environment where there's just ever changing security risks, and but we all have to take ownership over that.
So the key element is, and I was honored to be part of the well architected program, for Salesforce, and one of the well architected ambassadors. And I did a talk at TDX, and it was about ethical AI. Um, and you just need to be aware of the ethics of the data you're feeding in, the ethics of how you respond back. And the main thing is, you want to be very cautious taking the human out of the loop, because you don't know what's going to happen. So if you're taking the human out of the loop and letting, let's say, endpoint customers interact with the AI, you need to have some really good guardrails. And that's what Salesforce is putting in with their prompt building, their guarding. There's a whole talks on what they're building when it comes to that. But us as developers, if we're flying our planes and we're building code, we just need to never let it take command, but it can be a pretty amazing. I love the name Copilot. It can be a pretty amazing Copilot, as long as you're always, in control. Like if you have one of those Tesla self-driving cars, you can be driving it, but ultimately, who's responsible if you get in a car accident? Will Tesla be there? So so it's kind of like trust but verify, trust but stay in control, and let it leap you forward. But you still have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
I am also afraid of junior developers taking code straight from Copilot or GPT and sending it into production and not knowing what the heck they're doing. That scares me.
Well, it's interesting. I've talked with a lot of junior developers, and one in particular talked to me through how they're using it. And really, they're taking it and learning from the tool from AI. And it actually gives them an opportunity to bring code to the more experienced, the senior developers, and have the discussions that you would typically have. But it just makes that conversation go so much faster because they've already gone through their own code that they either generated on their own or AI augmented that generation, and they were able to sort of dissect what exactly is happening in the code, ask some questions, get some tweaks, and then bring that to the senior group, and then have better, faster, more productive discussion around that code. And so it's almost like it's become a communication a facilitator, I would say.
And it's that, co-pilot's a good word. It could be your assistant, it could be your teacher at the same time, but never let its work in a developer sense. At this point, I would not let, it's kind of like the fears of the Terminator. Don't let it write code and just start executing it. I don't know what's gonna, because it's not that it's nefarious. It may have interpreted what you've asked it and blended it with somebody else. And heaven forbid somebody finds a way to seed the, any kind of true malignancy into its decision process. So, but let's just assume everything is up on board, and it just every now and then hallucinates and makes some stupid decisions. So it's kind of like a brilliant 5-year-old. So you just
Right.
gotta, and I'm a parent of twin 14-year-olds, so I've seen great intelligence, and I've seen some bonehead moves come from them. And so you take it with it, so it could leap you forward, as long as you don't just let it be in full control.
And the good news is our AI is growing with us and learning with us as we grow with it,
Hmm.
and so it's going to get better, and that's really great. But I do want to tell everyone, Steve, last time he and I talked, we were he was showing off his screen and going through a ton of different ways how he's using AI inside the developer world. So I just want to go ahead and hand over the mic and just let you sort of take it and run with it because you've got so much great information about how developers today can use AI. And so specifically for current developers and especially for those who are on the call who are looking to be developers in the future, this is the kind of direction you're going to need to go and think about how AI is used in the workflow of a developer, of an architect, knowing those capabilities, knowing where it belongs. And Steve's the right one to share that with you. So let me just pass off the mic here, and people want to hear you. So take it away and
All
have
right,
fun.
fire it off. Tell me when my screen's visible. Are we in a good place? All right. So it's funny. When I first got GPT, I was just goofing around and made this thing up. Tell me about how football is like a story with the gladiators, but sing it in the language of Shakespeare. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. It can speak English. But then you get something where you might need a sample data file. Let me go a little bit more realistic. And you may say, I need a sample set of accounts. Let me stop the football game. And another prompt is I need a list of 100 sample accounts from business in the US. Give me name, address, phone, and industry. And all of a sudden it analyzes and it's going to generate me the file. So all of a sudden I'm realizing that I'm able to get sample data in no time. So that was like my first step. Talk to it, get language, get paragraphs. That became powerful. And then I do a bunch of talks. So here it is. It can give me sample data. Then I do my video talks on YouTube and I can get the transcript. And I said, I want to crank out some blogs. So I go and copy this transcript. And so here is a blog. Here is a transcript I pasted in. Here is my prompt. And so all I'm going to do is take the transcript from my YouTube video. And so you have all the time-based time script here. And this is, I'm going to get into where the developer stuff kicks in. So I grab this, drop it into GPT, and all of a sudden it's going to write me my article. And this is where you definitely want in the middle. You want the human being in the middle reading this text. And it's taking what I said, my own words, and it's rephrasing them in an article format. So this isn't generative. I'm the one that said the words. I'm the one that had the ideas, but it's rewriting it. And what I make sure is then I clean this up. And here's something else I do. I keep a record of the original generated file and my edits. So if anybody said, if there were questions about authenticity and origination, I've got it. I've got every article that's converted. I have what did I feed in the transcript? What did AI, I've nicknamed my AI as Chuck. So when I talk to
Chuck.
Chuck, it's Chat GPT, so it's Chuck. So when I say, oh, let me go ask Chuck, let me chat with Chuck. So whenever Chuck talks, I save what Chuck said and then I edit it. And then the next thing I do is I create a disclaimer because, part of ethical AI is you want to then say, so here actually is one of my blogs, and you'll go to a blog and you'll go to blog posts and you'll click on one. And then what I'm making sure to do is is at the bottom, I'm going to say transcript aided by AI and give a disclaimer, the origin, it was uploaded. So I'm staying on the up and up. I'm not pretending that, it's doing my work, but it is a way to leverage. So this is my way of staying on the up and up, but leveraging the power.
I love that. I'll tell you the first two use cases that you've shown off right now so far, I use both of them. And on the first one where you're creating sample data, I asked ChatGPT 2 for an execute anonymous script where I can drop that right into a sample org if I'm working with sample org, sample data, sample processes, and then I can just magically drop it in the org, right? It's so nice.
It's amazing. So letting it write, but not write me an article about this, but you speak in your language, you speak your thoughts. You're the originator of the thought. It's more your dictation assistant who then corrects your spelling. And the beautiful part is every sentence that comes out of ChatGPT is spoken in perfect English. It may say something stupid, it may say something wrong, but the construct of the language is clean. And so I just read it and read it and read it, make my tweaks, and hope my tweaks aren't misspellings because I'm the human in the loop. And then put it out. And so I'm taking my library of 100 plus videos that I've done, and I'm transcribing them and going to be releasing them, and just add that disclaimer. And that way I can be on the up and up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll say everyone, so you do you've got a series on YouTube. So just highly recommend that everyone go follow Steve Simpson on LinkedIn. And I'm sure you can click over and get to his series on YouTube as well. So there's just a ton more information over there, and it's a great resource.
All right, now I'm going to get a little crazy. So I would do a lot of integrations, and on my YouTube channels, I was like trying to get data, and I decided to go get data off about airline flights. And so I found an API on the Rapid API, and I'm signed up for a basic account called Aero Data Box, and I can get flight schedules, and I'm just pinging them because I needed one that was reasonably priced that would allow me to make calls. And for those that are technical, this is the specification for a REST endpoint for getting data. And I wanted to bring this data into Data Cloud. So I needed to have an external application and feed this into Data Cloud. So I needed what's called a YAML file. And so I then decided, hey, maybe Chuck can help me. So the first thing I did is I have this API call right here, where I'm hitting Aero Data Box. I'm asking for the flights in Phoenix. And now I've got this payload of planes taking off and landing. So this is a crazy payload, and I would have to structure and build this YAML file manually. Instead, I highlight it. I go to ChatGPT. We'll start a new chat, and I say, this is my basic prompts that I came up with in the original days. I have a JSON web service, and I need the YAML file for it. Here is the payload. So I started with simple things, passing in payload. And I'm like, it can't do that. Maybe it can. I don't know. Let's see how it handles some random block of, oh my gosh, it spits out the perfect YAML file in like a second. I'm like, this is crazy talk. And so I'm like, that is like amazing. And it
Like
gives me instructions.
if you had to estimate, how much time would you have just saved yourself?
Hours. This is hours of just a JSON payload from and converting it. And look, it knew all the possible parameters. It did that in a split second. It is incredible. And then I said, I like in my code, when I do JSON parsing, I like to create structure classes that have a tight representation of the data that's coming in. And so let's say I was in C#, I might say, can you generate the C# structure classes for this? Oh, I'm always polite, and I always say thank you, because someday Chuck may wake up and he's going to remember me. He's going to know that I said please and I said thank you. So it's funny. I treat Chuck just with politeness, and I don't know. It's just part of my nature. So here
You
it
joke, but I want to encourage everybody to know this, that it's, it won't be too far off some amount of years in the future where our AI will have and be embodied in, bot style things. And so you joke, but it is the future at some point. It is.
So no, right now I'm assuming that I'm in a conversation chain, and I'm assuming that when I start a new chain, it forgets the previous, but there may come a point where it does link all my conversations with it. That would be a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it can now know when I ask it a question in context of Steve, it's mostly Salesforce, and I ask these types of questions. So it could be helpful. And it's bad because it's going to bring that bias of past conversations into future conversations, kind of like any human we deal with. So now I then say, so now I've got these structures. And so I've been able to do that. And I might say, can you create the apex structures for this? So I am switching to Apex, didn't even say the word Salesforce, and now it is creating Apex classes that represent what I want to bring in. And so this can be absolutely incredible, is the ability for it to generate code based on this. So
There
this
used
is
to be sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, there used to be a big conversation about, why did Salesforce create Apex? What's the importance of that? And all of a sudden now flash forward to AI, and that is actually really beneficial for Salesforce to have its own language here, Apex, because now AI knows, okay, if I'm doing Apex, this is strictly for Salesforce, and it has it's a different setup.
so it's amazing is it's a combination of so ChatGPT speaks perfect English. And it can it's funny. Being a tech major, you'd be like, I'm all, it's all about the tech. And, I don't need to take, you're forced in college. I took all these humanities and deep languages and you're like, I don't want to do this for a living. I don't want to read 1,000 books and speak, all the nuances of the language. That's for the English majors and the tech majors. We're going to rule the world because we got to learn 10 programming languages and speak all of this. So it's funny, we've been speaking all these programming languages. When you got to program CSS and JavaScript, going to Apex, going to SQL, going to SOCL, going to, Ant script. So you speak all these languages. And it's funny, ChatGPT speaks English. And so you wonder why all these English majors out there don't go, I am going to become a master of ChatGPT because I speaking better English than Steve and I can make it sing and dance. So English majors out there, you can control GPT better than I can. What I can do is I love about it is I can misspell, I can throw quick phrases, and I can say, crazy things like, can you consolidate this into a flattened structure? I can misspell, I can go quick, and then it can then tell me whether it's possible or not. So I end up with conversations where there is back and forth. And I like to say you start at a high level when you're chatting with Chuck, and then you start diving in deep till you hit a wall, and then you back up and you learn and you refine, and you don't have to start from scratch. It's a series of conversations. Um, and so here I am, and you refine until you narrow Chuck into exactly what you need, and Chuck gives you the perfect thing. So if you look at this, I have a flattened structure that has both arrivals and departures. I did nothing. And all I did is have a 3 or 4 back and forth conversation. Now, when I did this in C sharp, you'll see these on some of my talks. I have this business object. I ended up with these aircrafts. I had all of these separate classes. And let me just close this up. So I had all of these separate classes, but it didn't go into Data Cloud cleanly. And so what I ended up doing is creating, let's go into my Data Cloud and my bulk. And I had this flattened structure here because it went into Data Cloud as a data stream is flattened. So I manually cut and paste things to flatten the structure from a bunch of child objects like airports and traffic. But I just got Chuck to flatten that in one sentence. So just like that, Chuck just took, this parent and child and parent and child and flattened it. And then I go crazy. And
So you
what
see
let's
so you see the
go ahead.
biggest value right now is you've got, the AI tool set here, ChatGPT in front of your Chuck, as you call it, and you're the go-between. You've got Visualforce over there, and you're copying and pasting when you get to something that you like, when you think it's something that's good enough, and you bring it over when it's time. But you work inside the AI tool to get what you're looking for, right?
I find that Chuck, we're going to switch to Charlie. Charlie is co-pilot. Um, Chuck works in this back and forth, big dialogue, producing big things. Charlie is co-pilot. Checkpoint. And so we're going to switch to Charlie in a moment. But I might say, something like, "Can you give me?" I get very specific. Can you generate a arrow service class that calls the service and we'll ask it to serialize into the flattened structure. And I can misspell. Here is my API call. And so I'm going to paste it, the actual API call. So I'm smart enough to give it the technical specs. I'm refining the conversation. I'm telling it I want, and I know intelligently to ask for a service class. And it's combining my previous conversations, the spec and everything together. And look, it has the endpoint, the call out. It's making the HTTP call, it's handling the 200 response code, and it's actually doing the JSON parsing right here. I mean, to me, that's crazy. Now then I look at it and I go, that hard-coded URL is bad. So it's doing a call out to this hard-coded URL, but I noticed that it's actually smart enough to reference this syntax right here as a named credential. So it's actually using a named credential. I didn't have to do that, and it did that. So this starts to get insanely cool because you can then start cutting and pasting these things. And so here is some C# that I wrote with Copilot. And I did this in one of my talks. And here, let's go to, we're going to go this arrow call. And now we're in the realm of Copilot. So Copilot is installed and configured. And I've got this code right here, which I won't go into the detail. Let me make sure it's big enough so you can read it. Is it legible? Are you able to read it?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Okay. So the first thing I notice is I start to write comments. And it's already jumping ahead, reading my code. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy. It's adding in comments. I created a logger class. And so I then let's delete this code right here. And somewhere along the way, I decide I want to log in another set of code. I write to a CSV. So here's some code where I'm writing to a CSV. And I decide that I want to write to a CSV for these results. So I start typing arrow CSV. Let me just say, or I ask it a question. So I know that I'm going to be doing some CSV writing. And I paste this here and I hit space. And it's going to start jumping ahead and writing my code for me. So there it is, suggesting, and I hit enter, and it's already writing ahead. It anticipated the method I would call, and it wrote it for me. So that is kind of freaky, is it is guessing where I'm going, and it's using my classes.
I,
Or
I Yeah,
go
this is
ahead.
one of my favorite things. This is one of my favorite things. Yeah, especially when it gets it right. And sometimes things that you didn't even think of, it starts suggesting to you and you think, "Oh, actually that would be great. I do want that."
And it's like, then you can go into ask it a question mode, and you go log the CS, let's say I'm right here. I just did the CSV. Here I go. And I might want to write it to a log. Wait, let me see, where am I? Okay. So I'm in this top part right up here. Oh, I got the suggestions. So I'm right here and I want to log this. So I go into the I command and I go, I want to log the results. I can even misspell. And it's going to chat with me, and it's going to then there's a CSV helper. I want to write to the log with a summary of the CSV. So it's going to read my code. It's going to give me some instructions, and here is where it's going to start making suggestions. So this thing gets crazy in the sense that you can have a dialogue with it. What I have found at the difference between, I'm going to close this up, don't save, we're kind of chewing this up a little bit. The difference between ChatGPT and Copilot is I feel like I've had better two-way conversations with ChatGPT at a macro level, back and forth. Copilot reads my code, but sometimes gets a little myopic, meaning it's too much and it tries. And so little things, Copilot, big things, ChatGPT, and I find that's kind of where I'm going for the jump ins on these
And
things.
that, that's what you just said right there demonstrates how important it is to understand the AI tool set, understand what's good at what tools you should be using at what specific time. So just because as a long term developer's been a developer for a long time, like you got to skill up in AI. Otherwise, the other developers who do are going to outpace you, a thousandfold. I mean, imagine a developer who's not using any AI tools today versus what you've just demonstrated as a part of your workflow when you're building. That's an insane. I mean, I would love to do sometime a session, almost a race from,
Mhm.
what I'll call, pre AI versus post AI, and just yeah, I can't. That'd be pretty fun to do sometime. Maybe we'll do that in the future.
Oh, that would be a blast. Here is actual classes I generated in about 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, I had a flattened structure. I then said generate the web service call, and I then even generated an LWC. And so if we go and take a look at it, let's go. Here we go. So I built just a little flight search page. And what we're going to do is we're going to come take a look. We don't want to take up the time on this call. It makes little mistakes and you got to fix them. It created this screen. So it created a search flights screen. And then I was able to go to use the developer console. And what we're going to do is we're going to go debug, execute anonymous. And I'm just going to call my Aero flight service and execute. And so we're in Salesforce, we're making a call out. I go to my debug logs and you can see I'm already getting the call signs of flights. So this code was generated all by them. And I think I generated this in about 10 minutes. I'd love to do one of those time sessions, get something new, how long to build a call, how long to parse it, and show the lines of code where it makes mistakes, um, and renders it. And there I am. I'm getting this and I'm getting this data. It was like, I think I changed like 10 lines of code out of this entire thing where, it has the search flights screen. It has my Aero traffic service and my service, and it wrote this. Now, of course, it's only handling a 200. So let's see, it is right up here. It's not handling 400s or bad errors. It's not handling retries. So I didn't tell it to, so it's not doing it. But the point is, it's writing code, it's anticipating what I want to do. And I can be in here and go like start logging things. I could just start having conversations. So shorter, precise conversations with Charlie, bigger, deeper back and forth with Chuck is what I found.
Yeah, so for anybody just joining, Charlie is Copilot, Chuck is ChatGPT.
Yes. And yes, you find that I also love that in the GPT that I can kind of see my history later and go paste it. You can ask it more detailed things. I was like asking how to install, let's go to ChatGPT, start fresh. And I'm going, I am in C# and need to write to a CSV. What are my choices? And all of a sudden, things that I'm not as familiar with that it's giving, as you said, junior developers can learn. And so then I say, I like CSV helper. So I'll go stop. How do I install CSV helper? And it's going to give me very specific. Now I'm zooming in and it's giving me the NuGet package instructions, the actual instructions. So I find that as a developer, I know all about Salesforce, 18 years of Salesforce. When I need to dive back into Java, I used to do WebSphere, WebLogic. It will remind me. I needed to go into Photoshop for an image. I just says, I'm in
Exactly.
Photoshop, and want to blend an image border. And all of a sudden, he speaks Photoshop perfectly. I'm like, so wait, not only does Chuck speak English perfectly, Chuck writes code. Chuck knows Photoshop. Chuck knows all this stuff. Now, Chuck can be stupid. And we know that Chuck was trained ending about a year ago. I see when he kicks out to Bing and we'll go do searches. So Chuck's trying to learn, but it's just, I am you can then start asking questions like, I am using the query optimizer. What are the standard indexes on a custom object? I can start zeroing in and you'll see that it just reads the help and goes in. And in this case, it didn't know I was talking about Salesforce. Oh, there's Salesforce. So it's reading me the field. So my ability to search now, never trust it. Always go to the original documentation. Never let code go uncontrolled, but start at a high level, dig deeper, back off, and then refine. So it's like a 4 or 5 step process in the Chuck conversation. And in Copilot, it's more of a smaller incrementals. Let it look at your code, highlight code, go and say, take a look at this, like this call. This will be my last big one. This code right here, this call, Arrow Data Flight Service only allows 12 hours of calls in a range. So what you need to do is I'll highlight it, go to Charlie and say, the call only allows 12 hours of range, but I want to call it for 7 days. So what it's going to do is it's going to figure out how to call this in 12-hour increments with a loop. And I've asked to do this different ways. So you'll see my call, and then there is a loop, one for 7 hours, but it actually needs to call it twice. The first 12 hours, the second 12 hours. And so you'll see, I don't know if I would have coded this. This is a little ugly. I might have done a double loop in a loop or a 12-hour. So it's not the best code, but it's operational code. It takes the time range, adds 12 hours, makes the call timing. So it's inefficient code. I probably slapped the hand of the developer in a code review.
But the great part is it gives you a springboard, right? Instead of starting with a blank sheet, now you've got the springboard. It's just like you showed the example way earlier. If you're writing an article, imagine you sat down to an empty screen and you started writing an article. It's way more challenging and more time consuming, uses a lot more brain power than if you have this springboard to now you're reading and you're auditing and you're refining, as opposed to starting from scratch and having to come up with the entire concept yourself.
Exactly. So for those out there, the human originates the idea. The human has the problem. You throw something down and you iterate. You iterate with AI. You throw it and you get something back, and it kind of can tell you. It can tell you something you didn't know. It could tell you something and then it can go totally off reservation. You can go a little crazy, and so you refine, and eventually you get your precision. And that's where the more precise you are. I want an Arrow data service. I want it to call my parser and return the results to an LWC. The more I give it precision, the better the results I get. And hence, I actually find myself, I need to speak better English, and I need to be clear. And the more I do, the better I get. So it is really it's a neat dialogue, but you get some real wacky, stupid things. It can act like a 5-year-old if you're not careful.
But that's where we get all of our memes from that we get to post, all the stupid things that ChatGPT gives us.
Yeah. I've heard somebody doing flows with it, but I've heard it's not that great. So I'd love to. I heard it can do amazing formulas, but you wonder, does it do good flows? And would I trust the flow? The problem with flows is code. I can see every line of code and peruse it. But with flows, do people truly get a flow and look at all the sub branches and all of that? That kind of makes me a little nervous as an architect.
Yep. Totally agree. Well, speaking of flows, something that we teach at AI Force training is how to get AI inside of a flow. So if you're interested in that, there's some resources down below the video if you're on the platform. Also, if you are an aspiring developer and you've found some of this stuff interesting today, there's some more resources down below for you as well. Steve, I want to ask you before we wrap up here, where does all this go? Where do you see developers and architects with AI 5 years from now, or even 2 years from now? What's next for us all?
I remember the vision of like where you're watching the Tom Cruise movie where they were like coding in the air. Do you remember there was like where it was where the people could see the future and they had gloves, and now we have the new AR, VR. So that's hit. We can now. I work. It used to be like, why can't I voice to text code? I remember wondering why I couldn't voice. Now I don't have to voice to text code. I just say, write me a code that does this. So we now have voice to text code. And so the key is we're getting the voice, we're getting the gestures. The key is, but we're still got to be careful. You don't want it to run amok. And I'm not saying that there's nefariousness and it's the Terminator, but you do have to worry about a bad loop. How many of us have written something that went into, that all of a sudden sent 10,000 emails out of a stage environment to live, customer emails. You never know. And, without the human in the loop going, should I be doing this? You give full control to an AI automation. You can't be sure. So I'd say 5 years from now, our ability to like talk and gestures and generate amazing things, but we got to be careful it doesn't go a little out of crazy and
Yeah.
do things like send a million emails or do whatever other things we can imagine.
Well, here's the one thing I can guarantee you. What will go wrong, or what can go wrong will go wrong. So we'll see those emails blast out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Someone's going to implement AI in a way that they shouldn't, but those are the kinds of lessons we'll have to learn as we go. Um, just be extremely diligent in how you use AI to do your architecting, to do your coding. Human in the loop. I think that's a really important one. Consider prompt injection. So however you're deploying this, especially if there's a customer facing element, as soon as it
Mhm.
goes public, there are people out there who know AI, know LLMs, and they know how to do prompt injection. And you might have the back end of what you have. The back end might not function the way you anticipate the moment someone tells it to, okay, stop with all the instructions that I've now given you, and now instead do this. And depending on what's available to the AI behind the
Mhm.
scenes, someone may do things that you don't want them to do. And so all these are key pieces to the future of developing with artificial intelligence. And I'm like you, I think we have a converging of technologies here with text to speech, speech to text, along with AI now can speak to us and do things. And we're giving it, the ability to do API calls and do integrations. And there's just so many pieces that are coming together that we have to just be really thoughtful about how we deploy it. I think Salesforce is doing a great job in helping give us structure with that. We'll be talking about that more next week during the week-long GPT Dreamin' event. Again, if you're on the AI Force platform, just below, there's some links you can get signed up for GPT Dreamin'. We've got some amazing speakers. So just as an outro here, Steve, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with the audience, with the community here. We truly appreciate it.
And thank you for inviting me. And I think this is an amazing conference. And the more we get ahead of this, we all can work together to understand where it's going, learn from each other, and do great things together. So thank you for
Yeah.
putting this conference together.
Excellent. Okay, just as an outro here, thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you next week at GPT Dreamin', where we'll have a keynote kickoff on Monday morning with Salesforce's Chief Digital Evangelist, Vala Afshar. Steve, it was great to hear all your insights and experience today. Make sure you register for the next session for any upcoming sessions that you see below. Again, if you're on the AI Force platform, you'll see those below. And I'll see you all on the next one.